suffered, he was against that, and he said everything has to become done in the court system. A strong believer in the liberal system of justice, he insisted that each case should be proved in court, and he regarded the trials not only as acts of justice but also as exercises in moral and political education. He also has Simon Wiesenthal Center is in Vienna. Vienna is the place where he is from. So next we come to memorialization. Memorialization is also a very, very important part because, as I said, I didn't put that name there, Zakor. Zakor is a Hebrew term which names to remember. So they were, now that the Holocaust has come into memory, they want to preserve their memory. They want to keep their memory there. So they started building memorials. It is not unlike the kind of museums that we go see. There will be some things which will be stuck in the walls. It's not like that. But they had a lot of planning, a lot of thinking had gone into it. The first museum was actually in Akko, Israel. It was a ghetto. People from ghetto had done it. I have not taken it. But Yad Vashem is a very, very huge museum. It was started in 1953, and then you have the Shoah. Shoah is it's a Hebrew term for Holocaust. Shoah is a term that they use now. The Jews prefer to use the term Shoah because Holocaust means burnt, sacrifice, and Jews felt, sacrifice is something you go willingly. We were slaughtered. It was not a willing sacrifice, and so they don't like the word Holocaust. But since we are only now getting to even know the word Holocaust, I still keep the word there. But Shoah is the word that they use now for this, the act that happened. And so the former Nazi concentration camps also, they were opened up by the governments, and now they are as memorials. Right now, Auschwitz, the biggest concentration camp, Birkenau, it is now in Poland. Now the government and those who survived. But Poland was a very, very unfriendly place after Holocaust. Then when they started murdering those who returned, many fled. Many fled the place, and finally only in 1984, there were a mere 6,000 Jews. When Hitler occupied Poland in 1939, one in three were Jews. So imagine now you have barely 6,000 Jews. So that is a thing. And now coming to United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, this was a very, very interesting museum. It was established by Elie Wiesel because Elie Wiesel would not rest. He was totally consumed by that because he felt they also had the survivor's guilt, and so they wanted the memorialization to happen. And all the American presidents were appalled by what had happened, and so they wanted to have a living memorial. And if you I had this privilege of visiting both United States Holocaust Memorial Museum and also Yad Vashem last year. But United States Memorial Museum is like huge. It is built in 1.5 acre building. The land was just they call it as a mall. Mall is where in Washington, D.C. You have the Supreme Court on one side, you have the White House on one side, you have the Lincoln Memorial on one side, and you have United States Holocaust Memorial Museum on one side. It is in the capital and the most coveted real estate of the capital. So that is where they wanted to kind of recognize the pain and make it visible world over. So it is a living memorial to the 6 million Jews, and they have also recreated the names of 6 billion people, and all their names are inscribed in the, they have a 5-story building to the length of which runs a glass wall, and they have inscribed the names of all these people in the glass wall. So you have these memorial. This USHMM is not just a museum, it is also an educational foundation. And it also has a committee on conscience. They have prepared the Holocaust Encyclopedia, a lot of material, study material. Half my bibliography is from USHMM website. So if you just go walk through it, you can also schedule a kind of an online visit. They will walk you through the museum. It is worth your time if you can just register and go for, even in Yad Vashem you can do it. Yad Vashem is in Jerusalem, and this is in Washington, D.C. So memorialization not only meant museums, but they also had, you know, there are very few Holocaust survivors left now. So they wanted to bring record all that happened, because there are a lot of people who started denying Holocaust. That is another big subject. I don't want to go into it, but there is a film called Denial by Deborah Lipstadt. Actually, she is in US now. She's still living. There was one UK man who said the Holocaust never happened, and so she had a case filed against him, and then went to Auschwitz and then collected almost all the people who died, and it was a sensational case that went in, and that was made into a full-length movie. Denial is a name. So already people are denying that this happened, and then you also have the younger generation who don't care to know what has happened, and so USA Shoah Foundation. It is sponsored entirely. All these archives are sponsored by Steven Spielberg. They have recorded oral testimonies of all the survivors. So you can see that. And Shoah movie is by Claude Lanzmann. He is a French person. It runs to many hours, and you will be totally destroyed as a person when you see the movie. And these are all, they want to perpetuate the memory and not forget the things that have happened. And in USHMM, you also have a first person talk by survivors. I met a survivor, and he also told me, see, maybe we will live for 20 years or more, maybe 25 years, not more than that, because 1948, it is already 77 years, 74 years. Yeah, it's almost coming to be 80 years. So you don't have a lot of people who still survive the Holocaust now. These are some of the pictures. This is actually, this is when they are building the USHMM. Behind, what you see behind is the tall long spire is Lincoln Memorial. But now this is in a construction stage. You know what the crane is lifting? The crane is lifting an entire cattle car. The cattle car, through which the Jews were transported to Auschwitz. So they had taken a cattle car. If you go to USHMM, you can see that. So they are installing the cattle car inside the museum. And this is in Yad Vashem. They have tried to piece out all the different photographs and to place into, this is also known as the Hall of Names. And they have also inscribed it as a form of a book where you can go around and see. And so finally, I would like to finish my speaking about Costly Peace. He was in camp because his brother-in-law was a German officer who was military officer, but they were all in a coup where they wanted to actually kill Hitler, and the bomb went off, but Hitler just stood up from the place and he survived. And so soon after he survived, he murdered everyone, including the family. Bonhoeffer was very active against Hitler, and at the same time, since he was pastor, he was put in the concentration camp. And just 10 days before the Allies liberated the camp, he was they hanged him. Germans had a better way of dying by hanging, unlike Jews who were gassed. But he wrote about, he in his book he writes about costly grace versus cheap grace. He's a theologian, so he writes costly grace is where Jesus gives you the cross, the grace which comes through the price paid on the cross. But we usually think, you can have grace and try around that. But at the same time, I was thinking, I thought, the peace that we speak of today, it's not an easy peace, it's not a cheap peace. It has come through the blood of 60 lakh Jews. And that is why, it is still an ambivalent term. We cannot say the peace dialogue has happened. It is still a pain. It is still a big sacrifice. It is still that they have given a lot. But then you have very, very positive and reaffirming stories like Etihelism. Etihelism is what Dr. Angelin has worked on. And she perished in the Holocaust. Actually, she had a choice to have escaped. But she said, I will actually go and die with my people. And so she went and she wrote her diary so full of forgiveness. And even Elie Wiesel, he was a person of peace and he got his Nobel Peace Prize. And Corrie ten Boom, she was a Christian family in Amsterdam, where her father was a watchmaker. And they, though, anti-Semitism, people say also had a Christian angle. But these people were true Christians, and they said we have to we have to deliver the people of God. So they hid Jews in their houses. So when they were found out, the entire family was taken into concentration camp. The father died. Corrie ten Boom and her sister were incarcerated in Ravensbrück, where her sister also dies. But Corrie ten Boom was she survived, and then she went around the world preaching for forgiveness. There is a movie about her life called The Hiding Place. If you are interested, you can speak about it. So you also have people who have this extraordinary, the costly grace which has given them the peace. And Eva Moses Kar is what Jayaprabha will present now. So I think I have taken a lot of time, but I am just giving you with a last slide, which I took in USHMM when I visited there. This is a place where when you turn around the corner, you have a full house, a full room of shoes, the shoes of the dead people. And you also can smell the shoes. The moment even those who cannot cry will break them. This is the point where you see so transfixed that it can come up to this level. So, as I want to finish it, I also want to finish it with a verse which says we are called to wear the shoes of peace. And so with this, I finish my presentation. Thank you. These are the bibliography. I think if I want, I can share it with Dr. Preeti, who can give it to you.
Yes, I will circulate it, Dr. Laura. Thank you.
Dr. Laura, ma'am, thank you so much for your valuable insights. We are glad to have you here today, and I really hope that people have understood what you've imparted to us, and there will be people who have doubt, but let's put it off to the end of the session.